Okay, we're continuing the shiurim in the Sefer Daas Tevunos, nishmas, Daniella Sheina bas Yehoshua Falik, Daniella Lee Casper, who was nifteris about a year ago, and it was really her tira that prompted me to really want to learn the Sefer more and to be able to teach it as well. Learning should be ili for her neshama. We're holding at the point in the Sefer in Siman Chavav. We're holding at the point in the Sefer that the Seichel has explained that the point of being here is shleimus, to achieve a sense of shleimus, but that shleimus is something completely intangible to us right now, something that our senses cannot understand at all. That's a complete yichud, a complete singleness, unity with Hashem, and that's not something that we can understand. However, what we can understand is that anything that is not that is a function of lack, a function of chisaron, right? And therefore we explain that everything that we see is a function of chisaron, because anything that stops us from seeing Hashem is lack and not shleimus. Okay. But now he says, I need to give you a very, very fundamental introduction when he begins this next piece, and this to me is really one of the most important concepts and ideas that comes out through the Sefer, which is going to be developed throughout the Sefer, but this is really the first time. And I want to just give it a very brief introduction, even though we started it last time, but just to give it a little bit of form. One of the biggest reasons that people deny the existence of God, that people leave a belief in God, is why bad things happen to good people. And this was expressed in a very famous statement by the philosopher Epicurus, where we know the word apikores comes from, right? The Torah word for heretic is named after this. And what he basically says is as follows. He says, if God, we say God is all good and all powerful, right? But he says, if God, but we see bad happens. So he says, either God is all good, well then he's not all powerful, or he's all powerful, but then he's not all good. And if he's all good and he's all powerful, from whence evil cometh? That's the way he said it. Right? That's a famous line. From whence evil cometh? How could there be such a thing as evil? Right? If God is all good and all powerful, and this is a very, very powerful question. And like the Ramchal is going to tell us, basically, virtually anybody who denies belief in God or is driven to a disbelief in God is based on this question: how come God let this happen if He's all good and all powerful? And that question is really answered in just a couple of lines over here that the Ramchal says. Now, again, it needs to be developed and understood more fully, but let's see this now inside. And Chavav. Okay. Shaloka Baruch Hu hayochol v'adei livro ha'adam v'chol habriya b'tachlis hashleimus. Okay, Hashem, like we read this last time, Hashem, if He wanted to, He certainly could have created the world perfectly in the pinnacle of perfection. But and not only that, but it would have been fitting, would have been sensible, would have made sense for Him to do so. Because He is complete and shalem, so too His actions should be. Ella, however, why didn't He do this? Right? When his chachma, when his intelligence, intellect, whatever that is, wisdom, decreed that the way this was going to happen over here was that there was going to be a creation who needed to earn good, which is the point of everything, and that good needed to be earned. That means there had to be something to do. If there's something to do, that means it couldn't start out as being perfect. It had to be such a situation. So He built things, He constructed the universe in a way that is lacking, that is chaser. In other words, just to straight on answer the question of Epicurus, where is evil? Yeah, you're right. If the point of the universe was to be a reflection, an expression of God's perfection and His goodness, then you're right, evil would be an impossibility and it would disprove God. But that's not the purpose of the world. The purpose of the world is not to be a place to showcase God's goodness and His perfection. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to create a place for work to be done in order for reward to be received. Now, a person can ask, well, okay, but the Holocaust and babies dying, God forbid, all these things, there's so much lack, so much evil. That's a completely different question. And we'll address that, but that's a different question. That's the extent of it. But the question of why do bad things happen, why can there be evil in the world, how can there be anything short of God's goodness and perfection in the world, because that's not the point. The point is not to showcase that. The point is to make a place to work, and that by definition requires a lack of perfection. It requires a place that's broken. If it ain't broke, we don't fix it, right? So the place needs to be broken to begin with. This is the concept of tzimtzum, the concept of Hashem withdrawing himself, holding himself back, right? Holding back his infinite goodness and infinite ability, to not make the world in the perfect way that he could have, but rather to make them exactly the way that they need to be in order to fulfill the purpose, the function of their being here. And that's why he made the world this way. And included in this is another understanding that we need to have. Shakai. The Shin Daled Yud, the name of Hashem. I just need to move this, I can see the time on it. Yeah, Shin Daled Yud, the name of Hashem is referred to in the Torah sometimes Shin Daled Yud. Chazal tell us in the Gemara Chagiga, this refers She Amar LaOlamo Dai. She, that he said to his world, enough. Dai means enough. So Shakai, this name of Hashem, that's what it denotes. What does this mean? That the heavens were stretching out and expanding. Sounds like the Big Bang. Until Hashem roared at them to stop. Like the Medrash says, that things were meaning the shame Shakai, Shin Daled Yud, is the shame of Hashem that connotes setting limits on things, placing boundaries. The world was expanding and growing, etc. when it was made in the creation. And at a certain point, Hashem said, "Okay, you know what? That's enough. The universe is big enough. It's pretty big, yeah, but it's big enough." Listen to this, because again, this really answers Epicurus' question without any coming on to any aspect of belief or emunah and these types of things. He just says such a simple idea. If a person believes that there's an infinite creator, of course he could have made more creations than he actually made. He could have made things even bigger than they made. Why did he make an elephant only this big and not that big? Why did he make mountains only this big and not that big? Right? He's infinite. So by definition, that we look around us in the world, we see to everything in the physical world, he placed borders, he placed limits. That's also not an expression of him. He's infinite. So anything that we are going to experience over here is bound by things. Even in the physical world, he's saying, right? It's an incredible concept. And you think about it, it's like so obvious. Of course, this world is not an expression of Hashem's perfect infinity, because it's finite by definition. There's going to be borders. Yeah, and if he wanted to make things on his scale, they would be boundless. They would not have any boundaries. Just like he and his abilities have no boundaries. But what he did do was create them on our scale, on the scale of the things that were created. Again, we're talking about just in the physical sense, right? In the physical world, things are created on a scale that we deal with them, not on a godly scale of infinite size, right? Okay. Hashem worked out the size and the proportions and the perspectives of everything that needs to be for the function that they're here to serve. Again, not to show and express his infinite abilities. So, but what we see either which way, that again, even in the physical way, but also in the conceptual way, Hashem withheld his infinite ability, to not create his creations on that scale, on that erech, with that relative way of looking at things, meaning the infinite way, God's way, but rather to do things based on us. Okay. Amar neshama, says the neshama back, calls him muchrach vaday. Wow, okay, I get it. Yeah. Because I believe that God is infinitely able and he can do anything that he can. And we cannot place any boundaries or limits on his ability. And everything I look around me in the world and I see is made to specifications, to sizes, with boundaries. That's not on a godly scale. But rather what he decreed in his ratzon to do in order to get a purpose across. Okay, in Chav Ches, the Seichel is going to continue with a little bit of an overview of a Sikum, so we'll start with that next time. But we just reflect on what we saw just now. It's this literally answers one of the biggest questions of theological, philosophical questions of if God is so good and perfect, how can there be evil? And the answer is because the point of being here is for there to be evil, lack, again chisaron, a lack of perfection, in order for the purpose to follow its course, which we'll see as it develops.